how's everybody doing today? My name is Steven Rosenberg. This is Ginzburg, and welcome to Marketing Success in Under 10 Minutes. Today, we are going to talk about the 5 steps before beginning a podcast. Jean, how are you doing so far today?
I'm doing excellent. Thanks, Steven. Always excited to be here. And I'm very excited about talking about the podcast because I am actually in the process of launching a podcast for one of my clients. And so I figured this would be a good time, since I'm going through this experience myself, and I've done this before for other clients and for my own podcast. I was like, hey, this would be a good time to just have it fresh on my mind and talk about the 5 steps that I took in order to get the podcast started. So,
I think this is really important because podcasting and audio in general, things like Alexa and whatnot, these are becoming more and more important when it comes to marketing and being successful in marketing. So I think this is going to be a really valuable episode for everyone, and I'm really excited for you to go over these 5 different steps because I really think it will be able to help people.
Absolutely. So the first step is, I guess the first step would be just to organize your thoughts and to figure out what it is that you want to be doing from a strategic standpoint. So who are the audiences that you're looking at? What's the format going to be of your podcast? Is it going to be interviews? Is it going to be just like you talking? Is it going to be you and a co-host? So first think about the strategy behind it. And also what is the strategy behind the podcast in general in terms of, are you trying to find clients? Are you trying to find leads? Are you just there to add value? So think about what is kind of the entire funnel strategy for what the purpose of the podcast is, because then the way it's formatted is going to dictate how, what the end result will be like. So I'd say that would be, Of course, the first thing would just be strategizing and brainstorming. So step number 2, once you're done with that, then the next step would be to start recording the podcast. So with my client, the one I'm specifically talking about now, before we launched the podcast, our plan was she was going to record 30 episodes of the podcast. Her podcast is really short. It's only 6 minutes long. It's called like the 6-minute CEO. So it's just her speaking. There's no guests or anything like that. So she was able to do that within like a couple of weeks, between her doing her client work and recording these podcasts. So that was the plan with her, is that we're like, we want to make sure there's, at least 30 in the bank before we even launch this thing. So that was step number 2. Step number 3 is I went ahead and I took all of the 30 episodes that she recorded and I had them edited by an audio, I have an audio podcast person that edits them. So my audio podcast girl, she went through them and she took out any long pauses or anything that, where my client is sipping coffee or something like that. So just kind of hearing for anything that needs to be edited out.
And I'm sure that's easy with having a 6-minute podcast.
Yeah, it is. And then we also added in, when she was editing them, something to keep in mind is adding an intro. So either my client created her own intro. It's just like a 15-second, this is Ali Lozano, and I'm an attorney and entrepreneur. She just did a really quick 15-second intro. So while you're editing it, or if you or whoever is editing for you, then it's best to just tack it on there right there. So you have the intro and then you have the edited podcast, and it's all good to go. So that was step number 3. And then step number 4 was finding the platform. So for my podcast, just for my example, I use Anchor FM, and we're actually still looking for the podcast platform for my client because we're launching it next week. So I'm trying to decide on what the best strategy is. I'm thinking of
I use SoundCloud.
Okay, SoundCloud is another example. I've heard Stitcher, Libsyn, and then of course iTunes. Yeah, so there's a few out there, and I'm trying to decide on what the best one is for her, specifically from a strategic standpoint. So if you guys have recommendations on any podcast platforms, I'd love to hear them from you and the kind of the pros and the cons. So that's step number 4 is the platform. And then step number 5 is the launch. So once you're done editing, once you're done creating the content, you have your strategy, you have created some art for it, you found your platform. So now it's time to launch your podcast, right? So the best thing to do, in my opinion, I did this, for example, for my book launch, is to get everybody, really excited about it. So share it with your social media, share it on your email list if you have one, share it on your messenger bot if you have a list of people on your Facebook messenger bot. Just get it out there so that people know that you have a podcast. So these are the 5 steps. What do you think, Stephen?
I think those 5 steps are very useful and very helpful. I think, again, from a marketing standpoint, it makes so much sense to start a podcast because people are moving more and more towards that because there's such little friction, because you can listen to it in the shower or while you're driving, and it takes a lot of convenience and time back to the consumer, which is what they really want. So I think that's really smart. I think it's really simple based on what you said. Now, obviously, people are going to say, oh, well, you need to have the perfect audio and you need to do this and you need to do that. And, of course, when you're at that kind of professional level, take those things into consideration. But I think if you're just getting your feet wet for the first time, it's really not a make or break deal. Would you agree with that?
I agree. I mean, I think audio should be good, but even if you're just using your iPhone headphones, I think that audio should be perfectly fine. I don't think it needs to be anything spectacular. For all of my recordings, I have a microphone that I use. That's for like any video and audio recordings. This thing was only like $50 on Amazon, so it wasn't a make it or break it. I think it's called a snowball. It's called a snowball ice. So I would recommend that. I didn't include it as one of the 5 steps because I don't think it's necessary. Yeah, I agree. It's necessary to get started. If you just want to get started and start your podcast, make things easy on yourself, follow the 5 steps and just get it out there. I think if we start again over analyzing paralysis analysis or analysis paralysis, then nothing will get done. So just record your podcast, have a bank, edit them, get them out there, launch them.
Yeah, that's great advice. Okay, perfect.
Cool. Any thoughts on your side? I know that you've dabbled in podcasts. I don't know if you still have your podcast. If any thoughts there?
Yeah, I still have my podcast on SoundCloud. It's called Influencer Media or The Eco Capitalist. One of the two, you'll find it. No, I think it's really valuable. And again, it's not a huge deal. It's a way to be able to get your content out there more and more. And I think the more platforms that you can have your content on, the better. I think the biggest issue I come across is that, trying to narrow it down to have a focus of the podcast, because there are different interests that I like to talk about and people I interview. So, I think having a focus is a good idea.
Yeah. So that's absolutely part of the strategy. So how do you want to, what's the strategy behind your podcast? So definitely step 1. Yep. So absolutely. Cool. Well, thanks. Yeah, this was good. I hope you guys enjoyed the 5 steps and go out there and create your podcast now.
Good luck.
Awesome. Talk to you later.
Thanks so much for watching. We hope you'll continue to get involved and join us as we help you find success in your entrepreneurial journey. Please follow, like, and share with others who will find this beneficial. We'll see you on the next episode of Marketing Success in Under 10 Minutes with Stephen and Jean.